What's up, heathens? How ya doing? So tonight we're talking about whether or not God exists. That's generally what we cover on Monday nights. So I hope your butt holders are holding, because tonight we have a Muslim that has evidence that God exists. Apparently. Well, not really evidence. He has a philosophical argument, and it's not even one that is new to the scene or anything like that. It's actually very old. So we're going to go over why he's wrong, why his explanations as to why he's right are just ludicrous and in no way representative of reality. So, I hope that you're ready for debunking some Islamic arguments for God, but I can assure you, they're the exact same arguments for the Christian version of God that they use for the Islamic version of God, which is kind of odd how they use the same arguments to prove the two very different gods, although they are the same. Is that what you're going to say?
No, well, yeah, yes, they are the same God, the Abrahamic God, but I have a question. What's behind your head on the screen? Because your head's like in front of it, so it looks like, you know how they have that halo around Jesus's face?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. Was that your intention?
No, actually, that was not my intention, but it is a happy accident. Everybody praise be to me.
Just what we know.
If I'm not mistaken, that is a celestial thing that's referenced as the Eye of God.
Oh, okay.
I want to say supernova explosion. It's labeled as a supernova explosion, so maybe it's not the eye. There is a thing out there, I believe, called the Eye of God that looks similar. It's the Eye of God. Yeah, I mean it's not the same. This isn't the Eye of God, obviously, but it looks similar to like Eye of God, that thing that we've got an image of. So
okay. Also, in other news, are you ready?
Yeah.
Quentin in the chat put, in case anyone is wondering how long until KC, that's me, officially becomes Mrs. GE. It's 45 days and 21 hours.
Thank you, Quentin. Alright, so this video is from Let the Quran Speak. Basically, it's a Muslim education channel where they talk about like what the Quran says about specific issues and everything like that. If you want to learn more about their apologetics and everything like that, it would be a great channel to look at and to figure out how they reason their way around things. And that's kind of what we're doing here tonight. I don't really cover like Muslim or Islam things a lot, mainly because I get hit in the algorithm and they don't really make it very far. I mean, I don't know if like Muslim in the title is causing not as many people to watch, or if YouTube's just not recommending it for people to watch or whatnot, but anyways, so we're gonna cover this. The guy doesn't really have great answer, like he doesn't have a great argument or anything. It's actually a very old argument that we're gonna cover, and so yeah, let's go ahead and get on into the video.
Welcome, I'm Sophia Ali, and this is Let the Quran Speak. Is God a made-up man in the sky? We know that God is at the center of Islamic belief. But how do we know that there is a God? Can we really prove that God exists?
No, you can't have proof that God exists. For one thing, this proof would have to be like in reality, and God is supposedly a supernatural like being or whatnot. Like God is supernatural in nature, so there's no way that you can like prove that God exists with anything that actually exists in reality. So you basically only have to go on faith about it. Like you can't philosophically reason your way there, because there's nothing to suggest that a God needed it to happen, at least that we know of yet. So I would say no, you don't have any evidence for God. Yes, God is a made-up man in the sky. And let's hear it. Well, what's your best apologetic there?
I sit down with Dr. Shabir Ali, resident scholar, and my dad to examine the evidence we have before us for God. Dad, we live in a time in which people speak about God in an increasingly...
Whew! I have to say, I respect his beard game. Now, honey, I don't know if you can see it yet, but he has a glorious beard.
He does.
Okay.
He does have a.
Just to be respectful as fuck right out of the gate, Respect that. I respect that beard. You need the mustache to go with it. I mean, otherwise
He
you
looks
kind of look a little
ridiculous.
Amish.
He looks ridiculous.
It looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's got a big fucking beard. Like, it's a nice full beard. He's just missing the mustache part. I don't know.
It looks fake.
It looks fake.
Yeah.
Peachy says, "Hey, I've seen better beardage."
Disparaging term. And there seems to be no certainty about God. Is God a figment of our imagination? Can you say something like that?
No, God is not a figment of our imagination.
Yes, God is a figment of our imagination. When we didn't know how to explain scientific things, or, well, not scientific things really, but when we didn't understand, like, natural occurrences in the universe or in our world or anything like that, we wanted to find answers, and we didn't have the technology or the know-how in order to find these answers, so we made up shit. We made up things like gods. That's why there's so many different definitions of God out there. That's why we have different ideas about what God is like, and does in our universe. So, yeah, he is a made-up figure. We made him up, and there were tons of God that existed before Yahweh or your Allah.
Collective imagination.
No, neither of that. And you're right. We live in a time in which it becomes more and more unpopular to speak about God. People would speak more about nature doing things, and it's gone even to the extent that there are closet atheists who are priests and leaders in religious congregations. Even to the extent that in Scarborough, Ontario, a minister in a church declared herself an atheist, and then the church had a major issue to decide. Should they defrock this minister? And in the end, they decided to let her be. Mm-hmm. So this is something new, and it will naturally...
Okay, so I wanted to address this real quick. I was actually covered that same story in another video that I did with the Godless Iowan. It's here on the channel. It's actually in my featured videos now. But it's on there, and it's about this Christian mom who is basically shitting on atheists who are stuck in religious positions because they don't have any other marketable skills. And he talks about the Clergy Project and how he's part of the Clergy Project, and how that really helped him when he was coming out of the faith, because he used to be a Pentecostal preacher. And so I like how he's bringing it up here, not necessarily shitting on the idea of atheists, like in faith in general, like in faith positions or in faith occupations. He's a lot more forgiving, I guess, than like the Christian mom was. I mean, it's just kind of weird how different people react differently to that.
Multiple people in the chat have mentioned his manspreading.
Fucking man spreader.
Someone called it Muslim spreading.
Muslim spreading.
That's something entirely different. Usually begins with an explosion.
Oh yes, that I thought of that, and it came out of your mouth. Thank you, honey.
Change the possibilities within religion, within that particular church to begin with, but it will have repercussions across religions as well. So we need to answer this question: how do we know that God exists? Mm-hmm. There are several good reasons for believing that God exists. One is what is referred to by philosophers as the cosmological argument for the existence of God. This can be put in many ways. I'll put it in a simple way and then in a more philosophical way.
Okay, so I'm actually going to let him address this, but there is a great Rational Wiki article at the very top, which a lot of people kind of shit on Rational Wiki, but I've went through this article, and it's legit. It points out really good problems with this particular thing, and we're going to kind of go through some of those. But you'll easily be able to tell like where he's committing these kind of fallacies and everything like that.
In a simple way, we know that you cannot get something from nothing, and the whole universe exists. This is something. It cannot come from nothing. The best explanation for this universe is that it was created by an omnipotent and omniscient being.
Okay, so for one, I don't understand how he can add attributes to this mysterious deity up there. Like, I don't understand how he can know that only an omniscient and omnipotent deity is the one that created it. Like, even at that point, you're getting way too specific. So I like at that point, like, you're arguing for a very specific definition of God, and you're not starting off on a great foot. Another thing is that science doesn't actually say that the universe came out of nothing. There's a lot of different ideas about how the universe started. I mean, obviously there was the Big Bang, which wasn't an actual bang. It was the great expansion of the universe. The very it was like in the Planck time of the beginning of the universe, right? So you have the Big Bang. It happened. And nothing in science says that it was created out of nothing. Nothing was created. It happened. And we don't know what came before the Big Bang, but we do know that what happened before the Big Bang has no consequence of what happens afterwards. So, he's starting off on a bad foot because he strawmans the Big Bang Theory in general as being something created out of nothing, when even the scientific version of nothing is still something. There's still an electrical charge when you remove all radiation, everything from any kind of space. There's still an electric charge there, so there's still something there. So there can never be like this absolute nothing like he thinks. But in his own theology, he says that nothing was created into something. Like, I get that God was there, right? But God is outside of this universe. So God started with literally nothing and then blinked and genied the fucking universe into existence, right? So in his view, in his theology, it's literally something from absolute nothing. So it just feels like he's projecting onto the scientific theory of the Big Bang.
Who has the power and the knowledge to bring this universe into existence. Now, that's a simple way.
Oh, so this God has the power and the knowledge to bring it into existence. What kind of knowledge do you need in order to fucking blink shit into existence? Like, the motherfucker, according to the Judaism, in Judaism, all he did was speak shit into existence.
You just need to go to the Holiday Inn and get one of them 3-day certifications in something. Just walk into any Holiday Inn where they have conferences and shit, and just go into one. There's a certification program for something somewhere.
Here's something that will totally piss off most of the country, but it would be totally hilarious. If you have a black screen, right, and all of a sudden the universe pops in out of nowhere, okay? And then the camera turns around and you see a bearded white guy, right? And he's just like, I stayed at a Holiday Inn. And then it ends.
Holiday Inn Express. It's got to be Holiday Inn Express.
Holiday Inn Express.
I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
and then that's the end. It cuts to Holiday Inn Express, like their logo. And it's like, oh, that would be the best commercial ever. Gary P. Did a super chat saying, I want to see a debate between every religion where they all try to use the cosmological argument to prove their own gods.
That would be hilarious.
That would be hilarious, because this guy right here is going to use the exact same philosophy and logical arguments that a Christian does to prove their particular version of the Yahweh God, and he's using it to prove his particular version of the Yahweh God. So it's really odd.
You cannot possibly think that beard is glorious.
I just meant that it's full, but I said that he's missing the beard, the mustache part, and I don't know. It's oddly straight, isn't it?
It's odd.
It's odd. Okay.
Now we go to a philosophical.
Yes, and I guess you'll have to answer the scientific claims about the Big Bang Theory, which is that things just came about.
Well, okay, sure. I'll come to that.
Okay.
All right. So now the more complicated way, but this now when we put it in a more philosophical way, it becomes difficult to refute. The simple way, somebody may give objections to that, but now we come to the complicated way, which we need to learn. So to understand this philosophical argument, we need to distinguish between a necessary being and a contingent being. Now, necessary, we know what's meant by necessary, but what's meant by a necessary being? A necessary being, by definition, is that such a being that cannot fail to exist, if he exists at all. Okay, let's think about a contingent being. We don't use this word contingent a lot, but we might speak of having a contingency plan, which means that if something doesn't go one way, it can go the other way, and we have.
Okay, so he's basically rambling on. Now that I'm back after being kidnapped by the Illuminati, he's rambling on and talking about contingent being and necessary being. And this is where special pleading comes in, because he says that things like humans in the universe and all these other things are contingent beings, being that they're contingent upon other things happening or other things going on that causes them to exist or whatnot. Basically, the causal cause and effect, right? And then there's necessary beings that are uncreated and that don't need like certain circumstances. They just are. It's the first or the uncreated creator kind of thing. And so this is where the special pleading comes in with this particular argument. The cosmological argument or the first cause argument is very special pleading because they special plead for God. God is the only being that's a necessary being. So they say, oh no, God is special. He didn't need to be created. And they do this in various ways, talking about how infinite regresses cannot happen and all this other stuff. They make a lot of assertions that they can't actually prove. But the main argument or the main refutation here about what he's talking about is the fact that he's special pleading for his particular God as being uncreated.
Can we just take a minute to be pissed about the fact that he uses the title doctor?
Yeah, I don't really like the theological like doctorates that they hand out. I don't know. I get that they have to go to like seminary school and they do like a lot of work in their own theology about it, but
that's
I
fine.
mean,
there should be another word.
Yeah, I don't know what word you could use. Supermaster or something. No. They would be their own gods. That's what he would.
I don't know, but it's absurd, and I don't like it.
Michael W. Roble, doesn't he look a lot like Ken Ham? He looks like Ken Ham if Ken Ham was more Amish. I would say. Charisma said patron. Pine Snake said shill. Patrician? Ooh, Patricia. Proctologist. Thank you, Mrs. Snarky. But yeah.
Plan for that. We have a sort of a plan B. So what's meant by a contingent being? A contingent being is that which may or may not exist. We are
and dependent on something else.
Depending on something else. So we are contingent beings. We may not exist if there is not the right sort of oxygen for us to breathe. If we don't get sunlight and so on, we will all die. So we may or may not exist, and our existence is contingent on the existence of something else. So how did we come into this world? We have parents. How did they come into the world? They have parents. How did they come into the world? Well, they have parents, and we can go all the way back. So all of these humans have been contingent on the existence of their parents before them and so on.
So basically what he's going into here is the whole idea that there can't be an infinite regress. Like there can't be an infinite regress of things that caused one thing or another thing. And the one thing that I do want to point out here is that he's labeled God as this necessary being, right? He's talked about him, or he will talk about him. I can't remember if he's already said something about it, but anyways, this doesn't actually rule out there being multiple first causes. Like polytheism is totally proven by this particular argument. This argument doesn't get you anywhere as far as like whether or not a God exists, because God could equally exist or not exist using this argument, because you can't say that there's only one cause. This would be a false dichotomy, because you're saying it's either Either there's one first cause or there was no first cause, right? But there's an amalgam of different things. There's natural processes that could have happened that caused the universe to come into existence. And then you've got the supernatural versions, which are a god of some kind or gods. So you have like multiple different things here that it could be. But he's also saying that this necessary being, this god, is special and it can, like, it's the only one that exists. It's the only thing in the universe that doesn't have like a cause behind it. Like it's self-caused, right? Well, I would disagree with that because there are two things specifically that we do not know of any cause for it. One is which particular atom in a block of matter decays in radioactive decay. Now, we know that radioactive decay does follow like a statistical model, but there's nothing that we can do right now in order to predict exactly which atom is going to decay into its daughter isotope. And so that is one thing in this universe that doesn't have a cause necessarily, but it happens, and it's the most random thing that can happen in the universe. It's specifically which atom decays into its daughter isotope. And then another thing is virtual particles. We don't know what causes them to pop in and out of existence, so that would be another thing that seems to be uncaused. Knowing these things, it reveals how he's using a composition fallacy. Basically, he's saying that this one select group of things is representative of the entire whole. So, like, everything that we experienced up until a point needed to have a cause. Therefore, everything in the universe needs a cause. And it's like, I don't know about that. Like, there's nothing that, like, that would be bad science at that point, because there's no way that you could prove nothing ever like needed a cause, or you wouldn't be able to prove that everything in existence needed a cause. Like, there's no way that you'd be able to prove that. And so, like, even now we can't prove that, like, that there aren't more things that didn't need a cause, like radioactive decay, virtual particles. There's no way we could say that's it, that's all, you know.
So think of the universe as a whole. Is this universe a necessary being, or is it a contingent being? I think everyone will agree that the universe is a contingent being, because if the choice is between necessary and contingent, when we...
Well, okay, for one thing, I wouldn't say the universe is a contingent being, because that would kind of imply that it's sort of like an organism or something. Like, it's not a being. I mean, I would say that the universe is contingent upon whatever caused the Big Bang to happen, but that doesn't mean that that cause is the first cause of, like, everything. Because we don't know what could have existed before the universe existed. I mean, time and space didn't exist before the universe existed. So some other state of matter or state of whatever existed prior to that. Now, we've got a lot of good theories, or not theories, sorry. We have a lot of good hypotheses about what could have happened. Like, there's this whole sort of steady state sort of not universe, but system that was before, where everything was in perfect equilibrium, and then something nudged it out and blew everything apart. Another good one is matter and antimatter slammed together, and then the resultant universe, like the resultant thing was the Big Bang, and the universe is how much more matter was left over after the antimatter collided with the matter, or whatever. I believe that's Krauss. That second one is the one I heard that from. But there's plenty of hypotheses out there, and there's a lot of problems with some of them. Like, there's the whole there's the Big Crunch. That's what it's called, the Big Crunch. The Big Crunch is this idea that the universe is constantly exploding and then contracting, exploding and then contracting. But the problem with that is that there's no explanation as to why the entropy reverses itself at the end of the life of the universe. I don't mean that as in like an actual life, but I just meant like like at the heat death of the universe. Why does entropy like reverse in on itself, basically? There's no explanation for that. So I mean, you can't say that that particular hypothesis doesn't really hold water, I guess. Sorry, that's a little bit of my cousin Vinny coming out. So I mean, we have a lot of hypotheses about what could have happened prior to the universe, but we don't need to necessarily know that in order to know that God didn't need to be there. Like, there's no reason why a God needed to kick shit off. JC, this argument is similar to me making up existence. For example, maybe our universe came to be because of quantum tunneling, or we live in a black hole. Yeah, JC, that's quite possible. I mean, there wouldn't be anything to say, I guess, that we're not in doing those things. Although, I don't know what the scientific, like the legit scientific response would be to, like, the black hole. Now, I think black holes are just like super dense things, and so I don't know. I don't know if that would be like a good scientific hypothesis, but maybe quantum tunneling. I don't know. Anyways, so he's basically making assertions, and he's making the case that there had to be a God when there's nothing to indicate that we needed a God. There's no reason to put a God in there because everything that we've experienced up until this point has had natural explanations behind them. That doesn't mean that a God can't exist, but it definitely doesn't mean that a God does exist.
Think of God, we think of a necessary being, but when we think of the universe, we don't think of it as being a necessary being. And it's not only believers that those who are believing in God who think that the universe is a contingent thing. Everyone seems to agree that this is the case. Now, a contingent thing needs an explanation for its existence. There has to be something that causes this contingent thing to come into existence. But the necessary being does not need a cause. So the only one who does not need a cause is God, and the universe needs a cause. And the best explanation for the universe as a contingent being is that there is a necessary being that is God that brought the universe into existence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but that's refuted by the fact that virtual particles and radioactive decay happen randomly. Well, okay, so that's a little bit nuanced with the radioactive decay because like the actual decay rate is, like it follows a statistical model, but the actual atoms that decay, like the specific atoms that decay into their daughter isotope, that is purely random and seems to be uncaused. We haven't been able to detect a cause, at least. So you saying that God is the only one that is uncaused is not in line with what science tells us. So if virtual particles and the exact atom that decays in radioactive decay can be uncaused, then I mean, that means that your God isn't all that special, that there can be natural things that are uncaused. Unless you want to argue that God is causing all of the atoms to randomly decay, and it's up to God's decision as to which particular atom decays at any one particular fucking picosecond, or whatever. Petosecond.
We're running out of time. Do you want to look at one other argument before we end?
Well, I'll just quickly answer your point about the Big Bang, and then maybe in the next segment.
Yes.
Well, when we speak about the Big Bang origin of the universe, we're speaking about the universe coming into existence. And if it comes into existence, and we know it cannot come into existence from nothing, well, there must have been something there. So what was that something? That calls for God as an explanation for the Big Bang origin of the universe. And if one says, well, wait a minute, before that Big Bang, there could have been another Big Bang, then a collapse, and then the Big Bang that we have here. And there could have been a series of Big Bangs and collapses all the way back. Well, it can't go all the way back unless you have someone to start off the first Big Bang.
But you see, we've already proven in nature there are things that are indeed uncaused. So that doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. I know I've kind of said this before in the stream, but just to reiterate, that doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. But it also doesn't mean that God has to exist in order for the universe to create itself, if you will. Like, it's not actually creating itself. It's a natural process that causes it to come into being, if you will, that causes the Big Bang to happen. So, I mean, you can't say that it's definitely God. You're speaking in a very specific, like, speaking very specifically about Allah, right? Which is the Yahweh God, just a little bit different of a version, is how I see it. But
The Abrahamic God.
well, the Abrahamic. What did I say?
The Yahweh God.
Oh, well, I mean, isn't the Abrahamic God's Yahweh?
Well, yeah, that's a name. It's not like that's the name they call it.
Right.
Could not have the series of bangs and then contractions and expansions and contractions again. So all of these, again, point to the existence of God no matter how you look at it.
All right, thank you for that, Brother Shabir. We'll have to pick this topic up in our next next week's show.
Absolutely.
Hey, YouTube.
Hey YouTube, come on, follow us over here at Let the Quran Speak, where we'll tell you how to become Muslim. So, yeah, I hope that you found this a little bit enlightening about the cosmological argument, or the first cause argument, however you want to say it. There are a bunch of links down below in the description if you want to check any of that out. One of the things that I didn't cover, that I didn't think to cover... Yes, honey?
Do your camera.
So one of the things I didn't cover is an equivocation fallacy, because obviously the whole coming into existence in various portions of the cosmological argument means different things. And so they kind of commit an equivocation fallacy by switching it up and meaning different things in those situations. So that's explained in the links down below. Definitely go check them out and everything like that. All right, so if you're leaving right now, I totally appreciate you guys being here. I hope that you will come back on Friday when we look over some crazy, like, anti-science, flat earth type of video. I'm sure it's going to be interesting then. If you will, leave a comment before you leave, smash that like button, and don't forget to stand up and use your voice.